Now, up until this point, we've been generating a ton of resources, and I've gained a ton of ways to generate them. I mean, just look at this down here. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening down here, but there's actually still more that we can be farming that are going to help us in our future endeavors. But this is going to require the mighty task that is getting into the mod Industrial Foregoing. Now, what I'm going to do with Industrial Foregoing is I'm not going to show you the whole basic starting out beginnings of how to set up this mod. Instead, I'm just going to set it up, and then I'm going to show you what I have done to set it up, not explaining all of the individual processes. However, we're going to be generating latex, pink slime, ether gas, and that's basically all we're really going to need in order to get this up and running. Ether gas being one of the hardest things to do. What I really want to show you is all of the cool stuff that you can do once you have that up and running. And just to explain some of those cool things that you can do, you can accelerate machines. You can make them go even faster than their default intended rate. There is a mod in here that actually extends Industrial Foregoing and makes it go even faster with even higher tier upgrades in this pack. And we have the ability to generate resources, mine for fluids and items that are virtual in the ground without actually destroying the blocks. And we even have access to farm animals and just generate things like stone, cobble, obsidian, all within a single block. And that's just barely touching the surface, because there's also things like enchantment extractors that can pull enchantments off of items and place them onto books, things that can fish in the world. There's all kinds of cool things in this mod. You just have to get over, well, this next part. So now, first things first, latex. That's the main way to kind of get started in this mod, and the way you farm it is by placing fluid extractors up against acacia logs, which are the best logs. You can use any logs though. And then back here I have modular routers that have placer upgrades in that are placing the acacia logs, and these have power, and if you give them power they will extract a bit faster. Later on we can add upgrades if need be. I have that leading into a jumbo tank, and then in the bottom here it is just simply connected with a storage bus that is partitioned to latex. That is pretty straightforward. And then I have another cable over here that is running the latex into the back. This is providing it into the latex processing unit. And then I also have water coming from our AE network that is supplying water into the latex processing unit. As of right now, nothing's extracting, but it is producing dry rubber. And whenever this tank fully fills up as well, then all of the residual will just be turned into the latex. The reason why I want this tank is for auto crafting. So it's going to make auto crafting a whole lot easier having this stored in our AE system, especially when we make the next machine, which is going to be the dissolution chamber. Now, another reason why I want to show this is because inside of JEI, it doesn't really show you how to produce these pellets right here. Unfortunately, the JEI or EMI that we are using right here doesn't actually display the recipes in this current version for the dry rubber, which is actually utilized right here. So you do need to understand that the plastic sheets are made in this process. So you need latex, which is this right here, goes into a latex processing unit with some water, and that produces the dry rubber. And this is how you get this now. And I'm hitting R on here. There is no recipe showing up for this, but this is the process for which it is made. Need a full bucket worth of latex in here, and then that will produce it. And then we just need to take this and smelt it in any form or fashion. And so long as we do that, we're going to get plastic. Now, the plastic in this is ore dictionaried to be the plastic from Pneumaticraft, which is honestly kind of cool, because that's a pretty big gate for the Pneumaticraft mod, and one of my least favorite processes, honestly, for Pneumaticraft. So it does make it a little bit easier to dive into Pneumaticraft, with that being the easiest way to get plastic sheets. Because believe me, the other way, going through Pneumaticraft, is honestly crazy. It is quite the setup to get plastic. Loads of machines, loads of processing time, loads of chemicals that you need to worry about, and make sure that you have everything set up appropriately. And also, don't get me started on the heat part of Pneumaticraft. Oh, that's another thing you have to worry about. Oh, here we are again. Chosen rants about Pneumaticraft's processing. But thankfully we don't have to do that, because we have this setup right here, and I can easily automate all of this, including what we're about to get into, which is automating the dissolution chamber, and it's very easily done with Applied Energistics. And this is something that I do feel is very important, and that's showing you how the dissolution chamber is automated. And it's as simple as all of the other machines that we had set up. However, we do have to configure a few things inside of the machine to make this work. And luckily, we have all the control over our inputs and outputs. It's just laid out a little bit different than most machines are, with this section down here being what allows us to set those. And the main thing is just making sure that all of these are set to green on the input, and also the fluid is set to green. And then making sure on the output here that the output is sent to push to the direction that you have your pattern provider set to. And after that is done, that's all you should really need to worry about. You don't have to lock anything, and you just need to give this some power, and then place your patterns in here, which you should be able to auto-generate utilizing the fluids. Once we have all of the fluids, as of right now, we just have latex, but when we create these recipes for any of the stuff that gets used in this machine, it should automatically generate the fluids and send it into the machine, making this effortless to automate. And to show you that process of generating these recipes, we need to work our way through all of these machine frames up into the higher tier ones to gain access to the really, really nice stuff that I have listed over here in my favorites. For example, the souls, this is a whole other separate mod that's a part of Industrial Foregoing that allows you to accelerate machines. Oh, it's tick accelerating. I mean, it's just free. It's so good. And we can actually utilize this, but it does require, for example, high tier stuff, which requires like pink slime and things like that, which we're going to be generating here in a second. But this right here is one of our first recipes, and we just need to make sure that we have all of these individual components like set up for AutoCraft. And once we have that, we can just generate this recipe here by clicking that. And you can see the fluid goes in here ready to go. We just have to build the recipe. Now, sometimes things like this might happen. For example, I don't know if this is the extended pattern provider's fault or not. We're actually going to be able to find that out. But you can see in here, I have a request, but this request actually has been filled. So if I go ahead and cancel this, I want to show you that we can do Industrial Foregoing. And I can, for example, request an efficiency, right? So I will start the craft, and we'll see that it inserts the craft, and then it returns that item and brings it back. But we'll also notice that the craft has not been fulfilled, even though we do actually have the item inside of our storage that was successfully crafted. So how do we fix this? Well, if it's not the provider, there is a way that I can potentially get this to work. And I have noticed that this is kind of an issue, and it was in prior versions as well with Industrial Foregoing. Sometimes the crafted result is different than what is actually provided by the EMI or JEI. So you might have to go in and modify your recipes and make sure that you change the output to the one that was actually crafted inside of the system. So let me kind of explain this, because this can be a little bit complicated, but the best way to think about it is the item that was pulled when you originally hit the plus button over here was pulled from here, but there may be some special data that's actually on the items that were crafted. So all we have to do to modify this is we pull up the one that we want, we place it in, and notice this item is right here. Instead, let's go ahead and click this and put in the one that we actually crafted and then re-encode. And let's go ahead and test and see if this works. So what should happen now is it should successfully complete the craft. Everything should work fine if all is well. And I don't think it's an issue for these frames. It's mostly an issue for these cards that I've noticed in the past. Let's try this. Let's request one. And let's see, does it succeed? It is sending, put the speed upgrades in here. And it did complete. So it's not the fault of the extended pattern providers. It's just the fault of the way the recipes are being built automatically. So sometimes keep that in mind if you're having issues. I know that this can definitely be an issue if you start to get into Industrial Foregoing and you start to make these higher tier ones. Whenever you create these crafts, whenever you build the recipe out yourself, you want to make sure that you hand place in these upgrades inside of your recipes you're building. And of course, this only goes for the auto crafting side of things. The machines, of course, are going to work. You just need to make sure for auto crafting that you have it defined correctly when you build the pattern. Tell you what, you gotta love jank and the ways around it. Now I'm gonna need a mob, potentially from a mob farm. So I went with a cow. And by the way, I did learn something new. You guys let me know. I can mob swab directly onto the jars, and it throws the mob, the actual mob that's inside of the jar, onto the swab. So that's pretty darn cool. And I didn't realize that was a thing. But we now have ourselves a spawn egg for a cow, and this is how I'm going to get pink slime. It is best if it is a passive mob to specifically get pink slime, but you can get it from a normal mob spawner. So I'm going to utilize this other area over here and simply spawn in some cows. I think that's going to work out pretty good. Now with a mob slaughter factory and a range upgrade in this bad boy, bam, we are ready to go. So as soon as the mobs start spawning, they should get taken out. And they're going to produce pink slime and a little bit of liquid meat. Both are being stored in 2 separate containers, and I'll just use a bus, just like the other containers, but I'm going to place the bus on. And whenever we're using tanks that are external like this, I like to make sure they are partitioned so we don't accidentally run out of the fluid and then something random that's getting inserted will end up taking priority into the tank. I don't want that to happen. So now with the pink slime, I can make advanced machine frames, and we're getting there. There's still one more major step that we have to do before we really unlock the full potential of this mod. And well, that is going to involve the next major step, and that is getting into the mining lasers. Well, the fluid lasers, because I have to, well, what I call drain the wither of its farts, because we need to fluid laser a wither. It's a little bit easier, though, than you might think. I'll kind of do my best to show you real quick. Now, the production of ether gas is by far one of the most complicated parts, simply because you have to get this right. Now, at the moment, I have a stasis chamber, and I have an energy cube underneath the stasis chamber to kind of provide this with a little bit of a buffer whenever a relog happens, or whenever I rejoin the world. Because I don't want to build like a structure that's going to contain the wither. So I built this in the end, separate from everything. So I don't really have to worry about the wither escape. And if it does, it does. These machines are honestly not that expensive. So what I'm going to do is I am going to expose this section right here. So show the working area, and we'll see it's 3 tall. And this is exactly how tall we need this to be. So whenever we build the wither in here, which we will be doing, we want to make sure that everything is a 3 blocks tall, and we place the fluid laser for collecting ether directly on top of that. And that's really it. So we just need to have that there, and we can technically place in all of our lasers just like so, if we absolutely wanted to. The only issue that I typically have with doing it this way is that you can't see the fun particles that actually happen in between. But you can do this. These actually have a working area as well, and you can see that just so long as the laser is within this working area, it will work. So yes, you can surround this entire thing with a massive ball of laser drills. Now, inside of the fluid laser base, we want to make sure to use a purple lens. And by the way, you do not have to do this in the end. You can do it in any dimension, including the main dimension you're in. Just make sure that you have your area chunk loaded, and you can hit F3G to check and make sure you are within that chunk that is loaded. Now, for ether gas, we don't even have to worry about the depth. We just leave it the way it is because we're going to be farming this from a mob. Now, up here, I do want the output to push to the top to go into this tank here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it this low tier tank, and we're going to actually fill a tank in the overworld, but we are going to link to this one, well, with the entangled mod, of course. Now again, to power these, I'm using gates, and the only thing that actually needs power is the laser drills themselves. And once we have power, these are going to start to work, and then this is going to start to work. So the stasis chamber down here is really doing all the work, as this is what's going to hold the wither in place. So I can go ahead and spawn the wither just like that. And the wither, while inside of this, should not regenerate. And you'll notice it doesn't explode or do anything like that. It literally just holds the mob in place, which is beautiful. But we're already producing ether gas, you can see right here. I do want to get some upgrades put into these machines because with me using fewer laser drills, this is the least amount I believe you can use. I do want to make sure I get speed upgrades in that, at least the base tier. But this should be fine. This should just continuously run. And let's go ahead and shift right click to select this tank. And let's bring this into the overworld and get it piped into an actual tank that I want to use. Now to get the ether gas in here, let's go ahead and place an entangled block. And then I'll click this, and this should now have the fluids, and I want to send fluids from one place to another, so I can use fluid transporters, or at least I should, from industrial foregoing. And when they're both placed, I can just click this one right here to then send fluid from there into here, and that ether gas is now slowly but surely building up inside of the jumbo tank. By the way, this is from Mop Grinding Utils, if you couldn't already tell. And now I can place a storage bus on this, and we'll go ahead and partition this as well and get it connected in. Beautiful. And so now the fun part begins. Now that I have ether gas, we can start to really play with all kinds of other stuff. Now, the main purpose for at least getting the ether gas is just to be able to craft those high tier upgrades. Now, the real use for it is if we had the actual storage in here, which it doesn't seem like it's either updated or it's just not in here. There's like a storage module typically that's a part of industrial foregoing that has like unlimited storage nearly. That would require the Supreme frame. But in this case, the only thing that requires Supreme Frames is going to be the Wither Builder and then also the generators that will allow us to generate power, pretty good power, out of the different resources that we feed them. However, the best way to get the power is by having all of the generators running, and you can get up to 25 million RF per tick when all generators are running with the mycelial reactor, which is absolutely an insane challenge and one of my favorite generators to set up, honestly, in modern Minecraft. Now that we got all of that out of the way, it's time to dive into in my opinion, the fun part, and that is actually generating the resources, handling all of those. And there's a couple of things right off the bat that I want to get set up. For example, the material stonework factory. And we're probably going to set up a couple of these, but the cool part about this is it can generate stone, but it can do more than that. It can actually process materials as well. So you can take cobblestone and you can have the cobblestone, which costs nothing, by the way, just water and lava, and you don't have to refill it. It just will run with power. It will be able to generate cobblestone. You can also generate gravel. From that, you can generate sand and glass, all of those things being automated, by the way, within the stonework itself, because you can crush, you can smelt, you can even craft. So there's all kinds of materials that you can get from here, including like smooth stone and stone. Like all this production can be done just off of the free cobblestone. And I say free because some things are not free. For example, to make obsidian out of it, it is going to cost a supply of lava going into it. To make andesite, it needs water and lava. Diorite, water and lava. Netherrack, it needs water and lava. So it's going to need these things for some of them. Cobblestone is one of the things that does get produced without needing to supply it constantly with water and lava, which is pretty nice. Like this can be broken down, like I said, into a ton of different parts. So that alone is very, very worth it. This is also a great way of generating cobblestone. Excuse me, obsidian. I don't know why I looked at that and said cobblestone. I just got cobblestone all in my brain right now. I guess that makes sense. It is one of my favorite blocks of all time. So automating with the stonework factory should be pretty easy. We can use entangled blocks for this. And the way that I can set this up, we should be able to place the entangled block directly on top of this, right? And we give the machine some power, and we just need to choose what we're going to be generating. So I'll put the water in and put the lava in, and this will just start producing without any upgrades. It's pretty quick on its own. Cobblestone. Now, if it fills up, it's going to continue through this process, but you can actually block these processes, which is something that you probably want to end up doing unless you're trying to make a very specific thing. And this is where all of the configuration really comes into play here. Because if you have these blocked and set to nothing, you kind of just want the inventory here to be pushing the cobblestone. So you want that to push up because we want it to go into this entangled block. And this entangled block is actually going to be bound, if we go down here, to our controller. So we can just have a bunch of these kind of set up, or just this one, and we can pipe it all into here. Oh, and that's going to be perfect, right? So that'll get changed, and we should have cobble not going into our main system, but instead going somewhere that we can have it either just stop once it does max out a drawer, or we could just have it voided. So that should start to increase. At least I hope it does. If not, we may have to use something else, like a piper, for example, to pull out of here. Let's see. It can be kind of finicky sometimes. The one machine that I have had problems with before in the past. Will this export? It is exporting. And yes, it is exporting because it just went in there. So we should have more than 64 in here. I know it is pretty efficient at handling how quickly it exports things. It is not. It's sending it somewhere, apparently, because it did dip down. But there's still 64 in here, oddly enough. So with a pipe going into the entangled block, it's definitely working. And it's very nice because we can actually set up multiples of these. Now, you might want to block the inputs. For example, if you're starting here, you might want to block all of these inputs from being set to enabled. Otherwise, if you're, for example, farming something down the line and you want glass to be pulled out, well, it'll probably pull out everything before it even makes it to glass. So yeah, definitely want these set to disabled. Or you know what? Better yet, just have this auto send, auto push, like we were doing before, but have it go into a barrel instead. Doesn't seem like it's playing very nicely with the entangled block. And so now, after setting all of these up, I now have some of the most fundamental basic resources automated, which is another really nice part about this. So gravel, I have sand, glass, smooth stone, and obsidian all automated right over here. Obsidian, I have exporters from the AE simply routing into the bottom, one providing lava and one providing water into here. And you can change this by actually selecting this right here. So I can change it back and forth. And this currently is producing this. So I just need to get all of this into the storage drawers and everything should be ready to rock and roll. Now this should be able to go way faster, and this is just the base upgrades. Now imagine this twice as fast. Notice, by the way, it's producing 3 per operation here. One of these actually changes that. And so yeah, this is just with this. The other tier upgrades actually increase this basically by doubling what we currently have here. But to do that, I'm going to need to be farming somewhere very specific. Now there's a couple of ways I can do this. We're going to need echoing and also quite a bit of netherite, believe it or not. So as you can see by these recipes here, to go to the tier 3, we need the base one here. That's going to require pink slime and a netherite gear, which is something we're going to need. And then we're also, to go up even higher than this, well, we're going to need echo shards. So both of these we can actually farm with the beautiful ore laser base. And that's because, oddly enough, the laser base has the ability to farm up those shards, but it does require you to be in the deep dark and set to a certain Y level. Now, this is also going to farm up other ores. I believe it'll farm up anything that doesn't have a restriction, for example, like lapis and stuff. But this is where these laser lenses come into play. Now, echo shards can also be farmed, I believe, from the warden within a loot fabricator. So this is another great way of getting echo shards, but I'm probably just going to go ahead and set up a laser drill just to be able to generate these resources and many others, not only in the overworld, which we're going to do inside of the deep dark, but I also want to use this to farm up as much ancient debris as possible. This is actually a great way to farm ancient debris, and that's by putting this just in the nether. It's also going to farm glowstone, which is fantastic. We're going to need that. And it also is going to farm the quartz, and that's just basically the only few resources I have not farmed yet. Now to get started with this, I am in the deep dark. I'm going to place these laser drills just like this, and I'm giving this a little bit more room so later on we can expand this by adding more laser drills. These are the particles I was talking about earlier, by the way. And I think that's just about it. Now I definitely want to fill all these slots with a few things. And if we go into the industrial laser lenses, these are the things that we're going to want to change the color of. And we can just change them to blue. And I recommend filling all of them up if you want to target a very specific thing. So inside of here, we're going to set this to only farm up with the blue laser lenses. This is going to allow us to farm echo shards. Now, we do have to put this, it says the max Y level is 20. So we have to make sure that this fits within that area. And it looks like it does. So the minimum is -64, the max is 20. It's set to 42, -42, and that is within those values. Now on the up, I like to have that set to push, and this is going to end up going into probably an entangled block. Actually, not an entangled block. It's going to end up going into an inventory, and then for right now, let's actually just have it go into a barrel. I think that's more than enough for right now. That way we can kind of get an idea of what's going to actually be placed in here. So we'll put a gate. I love these gates. They're so nice. Put that on there. That gets it power, and then we just kind of wait. Definitely worth adding upgrades in here. And that took absolutely no time at all. I already am starting to fill up with echo shards. Oh, that is fantastic. Now, like I said, there still should be a chance that we actually get other ores, but for right now, it looks like we are definitely filling up on extra echo shards, which I'm super happy about. Then to keep things on the same page, we'll also do one inside of the nether. And this is going to be set up basically the exact same way. Let me go ahead and boop these real quick. But yes, these are going to go right here, facing inward into this. But keep in mind, like, you can place this like on the side. Like, for example, it can be placed right here, so long as it's facing the right direction, not downward. Just like that. And this actually works as well. So like this will transfer in, like I said, just so long as this is within that space. Now inside of this one, I'm going to go ahead and place all brown lenses inside of here. And then the depth on this definitely needs to be changed. And I'm going to set it actually to 8. And this is very specific because when looking at the ore distribution here, it looks like glowstone has to be between -7 and +117. And if we look here, this needs to be between 1 and 20. So we definitely have to have the 20 in mind. It has to be lower than that, but no higher than 7. And it looks like quartz, on the other hand, doesn't really care too much, just so long as it's above 7. So just don't place it below 7, and we should be fine to potentially generate all of those resources: quartz, glowstone, and also with all of the brown lenses in here, it's going to be definitely more likely that we get ancient debris. But the whole goal here is to get ancient debris. Now, apparently that's not the only thing we're going to get, because some other things will say, for example, any. Like this nickel, for example, can be in any biome, and that also includes biomes that are in the nether. So we're probably going to be generating a lot of the stuff that would typically generate in the overworld. And it looks like we have a mix of things. We are getting modern industrialization raw ore, which, you know what, I'm not mad about. Any way that we can get any of this stuff is really good. But the main thing I really want is ancient debris. And a huge part of wanting it in this particular state is the fact that we can not only double it, but I believe triple it by putting it into a crusher, turning it into dirty netherite scrap, then enriching it, and that will basically triple the amount we get out of one ancient debris. And also keep in mind, this is pretty slow right now. I haven't made the max upgrades, and I also haven't maxed out how many of these exist. This is only 4, so we can put a ton more lasers on this. With a little bit of expansion, this right here is running incredibly fast. So we can actually see the processing rate. And by the way, you can put an efficiency tier in here, by the way, which is supposed to reduce the processing time by 20%. I don't necessarily notice that huge change when in here, but this is one of the only upgrades that can go inside this machine. But up in here, we are producing a lot, and definitely a lot of ancient debris. It is quite significant, the fact that it is just casually producing this so frequently. And something to note, you could stack another laser drill on top of these, another laser drill on the bottom of them, and then also fill in the center the same way, and also fill in another layer on the back, and that essentially would be a maxed out version of this. So the potential is quite insane, honestly. Now, actually, the more that I look at it, it looks like the only real thing worth keeping is maybe the platinum from here. So I will be keeping platinum, but everything else will be going except for the nether quartz and the glowstone. And the way I can do that is by using an advanced void upgrade, and we'll put this into a blocking mode, I believe, or actually, yeah, a blocking mode, right? And this should turn this into a whitelist. So we'll say, hey, make sure we keep ancient debris. Hey, make sure we also keep glowstone, and keep that, and also keep the raw platinum. Everything else should be able to go, and we shouldn't have to worry about that anymore. Let's, for example, that place in, this place is in, gets voided, 10 gets voided. Perfect. So as we pick this up and put it back in, everything else should disappear, which is exactly what I want. By the way, just catching on fire randomly is absolutely hilarious. But there we go. So this is all being kept, which is perfect and exactly what I want to see. So now I should be able to link this, shift right click to claim that, and, well, connect it to the overworld. And so by doing this, that should be connected. By the way, this doesn't really like this for some reason. Like, this says void air, but it is connected to another one of these barrels, but it is somewhere else. So maybe on reload that would actually fix. I have no idea. But right now it looks incredibly janky. But this should now export, and we need ancient debris. I'm going to go ahead and load that in, and then all of the other materials. And now for the pain that is actually making these more industrial foregoing add-ons, because we are going to have to constantly kind of modify all of these recipes till we get them right. But the way that I want to build them out is, for example, right now I pulled them in from JEI, but you need to take the ones that you've already crafted and use them in the actual recipe here. So this is a speed upgrade. When I click this, notice, by the way, now it pulls up as an autocraft. Otherwise, you're going to have a hard time because these crafts are just not going to work for you. And same for the output. When we initially put the output in, it's probably going to have the same issue that we had before, where it doesn't recognize that it has actually finished crafting. So taking a look, for example, at this one, if I request it, it's going to craft the first tier, which is perfectly fine. Also, by the way, it's doing a smithing recipe to get that netherite. But then it just crafted it. And notice it did craft it like we had the issue before, but we're going to have to take that pattern that we have in here, and we're going to have to remodify it again to make sure that it can accept it. And then also do this one more time, because there is another tier after this. So I have to put the upgrade, or put the recipe back in here. Actually, will it let me do that? Oh wait, it has to be the pattern. Yeah, the recipe back in here, clear this, and then put this one in as the output and re-encode. And then now this should recognize when we finish this. Until then, we have to cancel the craft. Thankfully, once all of the auto crafting is over, we now have access to these high tier upgrades, and these are insanely fast. And once you upgrade the dissolution chamber, all of this becomes even faster. And yes, it is very, very fast. For example, this is base speed. We put this in, and this is now upgraded speed. So yes, it does produce incredibly fast. And this also goes for the lasers as well. We just have to simply craft them. For example, if I start here, this and this, we'll be able to see how quickly the dissolution chamber is now. Yeah, very, very fast. Now, definitely because of the massive amount of ether gas that you actually need, it's definitely recommended to use your first upgrades to speed this bad boy up first. So I went ahead and took all of those upgrades I've made thus far, and went ahead and put them into this. And this is actually producing quite a bit faster now, this being the biggest limiting factor for making all of those insane upgrades. But with that, I think I'm gonna have to call it a day. This has been quite a productive episode. I mean, we got access to all kinds of stuff. I mean, this is producing every time it operates an echo shard. We're also producing unlimited ancient debris now. I mean, what more could you want? Automated unlimited resources. Also with a speed scale factor never before seen. You gotta love it. And so if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and give this video, guys, a huge thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. And of course, guys, I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And with that being said, it's now time to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that huge thanks is going to go out to Strikeling. Thank you so much for your amazing support and choosing to support me over on the Discord by becoming a Discord premium member and supporting in one of the best ways possible. Guys, I, of course, look forward to seeing you in the next episode, so be sure to click that subscribe button and give this video a huge thumbs up. And if you've made it this far, might as well check me out over on Twitch and give me a follow over there if you would. You can find me at twitch.tv/ChosenArchitect, or you can find it linked down in the description below. Also, join the Discord and join the amazing crew. I do hang out in there all the time, and I would love to hang out with you guys in there as well. So, guys, I'll see you in the next one. And as always, thanks for watching. Bye!